Good afternoon and welcome to the February 1st meeting of the Watershed Committee. We have all of our members here in the audience as well as several staff members. So first order of business, call the meeting to order. Second order of business is the approval of the minutes. This is going back to our October 25th meeting. We didn't have a November meeting. Any comments, questions, concerns on those minutes?
I move to approve. Great job as usual, Linda. Thank you.
I second them.
Second by Ed. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay. So those are passed. First item of discussion is our annual pond treatments. So we talked about this in October of last year. This group recommended moving ahead with those treatments to continue on with that. We had brought at that time the ATIP bid. That's the group we've been working with that does the pond treatments. We have that number. Recently, we went to the town board, sat with the new board. First part of the year with the new board, new supervisor, want to make sure they were still comfortable with, going ahead with those treatments. Went to the work session. The board was good with that. So we passed the resolution at that night, and then subsequent to that, we've passed it on to ATIP. They've already sent us our paperwork for our applications to fill out, so we've signed off on those, getting those into DEC. And then Linda and Mike have been working on preparing the letters that we need to send out to the people along those ponds and stream areas, informing them of that they will be treated and have some materials that apply to those. So those need to be done, and the letters need to be out, confirm that those have been mailed. Then we package all that up along with the signed applications, the fees, give it back to ATIP, and they submit that to DEC to get our permit. So we should be hopefully well ahead of the curve this year, but as we've done in the past, we waited a little longer. There was lakeshore flooding, some other things, and then that kind of derailed us or pushed us off a little bit longer. So this year we want to make sure we got in sooner. That's why this group talked about it, in the fall. So hopefully we should be in good shape, and they can come back and do the normal treatments we've been going with sometime this summer. Any questions, concerns on that? Okay. So next item, stream cleaning update. Bob and the drainage crew, I think since the last meeting we may have just started. We call it Meadowbrook Pond, but the Ashbrook Drive. So if you come off of Shoecraft Road, it's one that was kind of been on our list for a number of years. Mike's pulling it up on the map internally. So Shoecraft's on your right. You can see State Road on an angle, but we had some drainage concerns out of the townhouses on Ashbrook. Things weren't flowing in that stream. There was a blockage under the culvert in the road. The crews were able to kind of hole ram through with a tree to get the wad of basically it's vegetation between Phragmites and the pond is being taken over by Phragmites, but just the vegetation and the organic material in it blocked the culvert. They were able to clean that out as well as clear a channel into the pond. And then as Mike is highlighting, work with the neighbors, that's the Watersong neighborhood there, clean the pond, the discharge of the pond, and then the stream down going up towards Rosebud Circle. So that project's been completed. It was nice to be able to do that kind of in the cold weather. December was a nice opportunity to get in. We didn't have a lot of snow yet, but did have cold weather, so they were able to track in without making too much of a mess. We'll have to come back in the springtime, do a little cleanup, some topsoil and seed, in some of those areas out, but it was good that we were able to get that one done and completed. Bob, I don't know if you got anything else you want to
we also went to the south, if you go up there, all the way down to the end of them townhouses, that whole channel, all the way to there. That's all been cleaned out. All them backyards can hopefully now drain. They were soggy. So.
Yeah, we've been receiving some complaints from those townhouses for a couple of years. I think they do have basements in them. They've seen in extreme events some water in them. And just I think with the culvert being plugged with the vegetation in there, it just wasn't really going anywhere. So hopefully now with that open, the pond still has quite a heavy cover of Phragmites in it, so that's something we may have to look at in the future, how you get rid of it. I don't know if anybody's quite figured that out yet, but we at least kind of cut a channel out into the pond, but that may be something we look at in the future is whether we need to do a more significant pond cleaning dredging, something, but I think we at least open the channels, we open the drainage ways in and out of it, so that should help. But that's something we'll have to look at for the pond, because that one wasn't designed as a deep water pond. That was designed as a wetland pond, which is great. But, now that Phragmites has kind of taken that over, it's just a solid wall of it. I know we walked over that with Tim Short, the equipment operator, and walk up there, and you couldn't walk in, 6 inches. So he's working on the edge to try to at least open some channels into it. But it's a pretty solid wall of vegetation to get in, and obviously for the water to get through. So then from there, again, Bob and his crew and Tim have moved over east on Plank Road, so we've been calling it the Black Forest neighborhood. There's several private drives. But this is an area that, out of Hermance Drive, we've had some concerns, drainage in that area, and that water's actually supposed to flow to the north. But I think with the drainage, some of it's been flowing south or not flowing at all. So Bob and his crew have been working on the east side of the road, opening that up. And
We're started on Harris, north of Black Forest right there, and we've come around to Black Forest right now. We cleaned all the trees out. We roughed in the stream that was pretty much filled. So now the water has a spot to go to help drain everything on the south side of Black Forest through there. Now hopefully it'll drain through there, and we're kind of letting that drain down a little bit before we go out in there, because there was
let it dewater
foot and a half of water out in there.
And then we've got a permit to do the west side as well, all the way over, as Mike's shown, all the way down to Plank, and then all the way over to Stablegate. So that was an area that we had cleaned kind of Stablegate north and west in recent years, but now we're looking to kind of complete that piece going from there over. So hopefully that should be a betterment, or improve the drainage through that neighborhood. But neighbors were very happy and willing to help. I think that was probably the fastest one. We sent out the papers saying, hey, we need releases, and they were back almost immediately, and nobody's expressed any issue, concern. Obviously happy to get drainage help, and so hopefully that'll help that area. And I'm hoping kind of at the far end, Hermance, that's kind of been an ongoing drainage issue for a number of years, that if we can kind of at least whether dewater the area in the streams, we're never looking to dewater wetlands, but farm fields and neighborhoods shouldn't be holding standing water. So hopefully we can drain that down. But as Bob said, they even open that up and have a foot and a half of water to kind of just drain down, get that to dewater a little bit out of there, and then get back in and clean that
So
up.
you
But
can't even see any defined ditch on the south side of Black Forest right now. Hopefully now the water's gone down, we can
find it and then
try to find where the old ditch was and start cleaning it.
With the DEC doing their, not new regulations, but just enforcing regulations, were these from previous years?
They are, thankfully, because we're still
Yeah.
going around with them. They're going to get away, or at least that's their opinion, of doing a whole stream cleaning progress or process that we've done in the past. So we just got an email back from them saying one of the applications, we work with an engineering firm, they submitted it. They still said, we need more justification on why this is needed. Show us what the impacts on the houses are. Show us that there's been flooding, and then we'll consider your permit. So it's going to be a challenge going forward from what we've done in the past.
Are you still working with BME Associates on those?
Yep.
Because they have a pretty long-standing relationship, but it doesn't seem to be forwarding it on any quicker.
There's new crew, new
Yeah.
people at DEC.
Sure.
So obviously they're reading the rules and regs a little more closely and tightly than in the past. I think we need to kind of, again, rebuild that rapport with that group. They did come out and walk with us. We shared with them, in the fall that, we walked with them. Hopefully we can, establish a rapport with them, show them what we're trying to do, what we're not trying to do. We're not trying to drain wetlands. We're not trying to, create other, environmental impacts. We're not trying to dig, the Erie Canal. We're just trying to provide, drainage that was in these neighborhoods, and just through time, siltation, tree growth, dead ash trees, for whatever reason, has silted in over time and just is no longer functioning. So it's going to be interesting as as we move forward. And I think and to this committee's credit, to the town board's credit, and us having a drainage program, I think we're much more proactive than a lot of communities are. And one of the items I'll jump into, we did get audited, went through our program, and one of the guys here that was auditing it asked the question and goes, you guys are much more proactive than any other community. What's going on? What's the need? Whatever. I go, we're not looking to do work just to do work, but right now we've got a drainage fund. We've got, the Watershed Committee, which is supportive of it. We've got a town board that's supportive of us doing this and the political will. We're trying to take advantage of these items while we've got them and, use that to, help improve drainage, throughout the town. We hadn't done anything in years. Whether other communities are in that same realm, whether they have those same opportunities, but I think they're just looking and saying other communities aren't being this proactive, other communities aren't asking for these permits. What is Penfield doing? Why are we out there, doing so much cleaning? So I don't know if that's given them some pause or that's given them some concern of why we're doing so much and other communities aren't, but I'm just saying, hey, we've got the opportunity and we've got the support. Right. I think it's a benefit to our residents and everybody pays into the drainage funds, and I don't think I haven't found the person yet that says, I want bad drainage. No one's fought me on that. That's why most people are very willing and able to, sign a release and allow us in and, to make sure their drainage works.
I also think, Mark, to the credit of the previous committee members, the previous administration, this is not something that's occurred over the past 10 or 15 or 20. We're talking, mid-70s now that started this? This
we've
is
got a
not
more
something
defined program, but,
Right.
It's something that the town used to hire out. We spend, a lot of money with Morrison and some other groups. I think Commission Ditch, to the credit of the farmers, was kind of a kickoff to our renewed request for permits and getting in and maintaining that. So that was, mid-2000s to get in and do that part of it. And then we've been trying to come up with a methodical approach, working with this group to look at what we haven't cleaned in a while, what you guys are hearing in the community, who has drainage issues, hearing from the DPW and their crew. And, thanks to them, Rich Gross comes to us in the wintertime. He goes out and walks streams for us and says, hey, we're not plowing right now. We've got some time available. Would it be beneficial? So thankfully, the DPW affords us, 2 guys. We, Mike and I sit down and mark up a map and say, we haven't seen these streams in a while. Can you go out and walk them? They'll come back and go, yeah, that's still flowing pretty good. I think we're good. Now there's a big tree down here that gets back on the DPW's list. Bob just shared, their crews are out now on Commission Ditch. There's some trees down. They're able to track in. We've kind of mowed along the edge, pulled the trees out, put them to the side, keep the drainage open and flowing, so we're not going in and having to do dredging. We're not having to do, anything soil disturbance-wise, but we can just, pull them out. But, thanks to, Rich and, Bob's crew, they've afforded us an extra set of eyes in the wintertime. They go out and walk the streams. They look at our ponds. They look at our drainage ways, and at least we, some we take from, residents we do hear from. We can add that into our list, this committee, and then as well as, the DPW to kind of keep an eye on what's happening out there and make sure it's flowing. Yeah, go ahead.
Mark or Bob, I just have a question. That area behind Stablegate that you just cleaned, does that creek touch one of those retention ponds or not? Because
Stablegate, no, not on Stablegate. That's just all a ditch.
Okay.
Because I said because we're doing on the east side of Stablegate.
Yeah, they're going to go from Stablegate east
towards Harris Road, and then down towards Plank Road.
Yeah, we don't have anything on the west side that we're doing currently. That was done, and I don't have it in front of me, a couple of years ago, maybe early teens or something. I think we cleaned that west side or mid-teens. Going north, we'd have to pull up our map, but.
Okay.
So, yeah, back to your comment, Ed, it's going to be challenging going forward. They're going to look and say, where is the spot? Where is the source? What is the issue? And sometimes you can identify it, and sometimes you can, point out, the spot. But also, when it's in the middle of a wooded area, how do you get into it? We've got to still get access in. We've, the size of trees and brush and everything else that's in there, we've got to get a sizable piece of equipment in to access that spot and to clean it. And open it up. So.
It almost seems like we're being punished because we're proactive.
In the short term, I think so. I just think we're being more proactive than other communities, so they're just kind of being a little hesitant as, what the heck is Penfield doing? Why are they doing all this much and everything else? So again, I think we need to establish that rapport with the DEC and show that we're not just out there digging to be digging. We're not out there trying to drain wetlands. We're not out there trying to, create, huge channels, through these neighborhoods. We're just trying to reestablish some of the drainage ways that haven't been maintained through the years and would have been maintained by the farmers or, who else was in the area. But, so Meadowbrook will take us through probably the winter and into the spring. And then from there, I still need to work on getting the releases for the Piper's Meadow neighborhood. So that's down here off of Jackson. We cleaned a portion of that through the Nature Conservancy property last winter. Kind of started last winter and then we finished it in the spring. So that'll kind of be either a spring or, early summer project, but have heard from the neighborhood in there, so just going down Jackson from where we are, that it sounds like the neighborhood overall is just kind of holding water. So if you just go down to your left a little further. I've heard from a couple of neighbors in there. I think it's at Bloom's End on the one.
Did this include some of the Penfield School District, Mark, or is that a different project altogether? Or?
The last piece did, yes. So what we may still need to access through their property just to get into there. So the north piece, Mike was just on it. We did access in through the school district property in to get into there. So that's the school district property Mike's on right now. We tracked in, cleaned that stream, and then it goes up through Nature Conservancy property, goes behind Fiddler's Hollow neighborhood into there, and then now there's a lower leg to it that comes out of the end of, is that Splendorwood? So Splendorwood and drains out of that neighborhood, and I think that one's holding some water because we've heard from a couple of neighbors in there, I think it's Pearl Bush, that said the neighborhood just isn't draining and everybody's yard is wet overall. So I think it's just not dewatering the neighborhood is just kind of saturated. So I think if we can get in and do that, probably summertime would be best once it dries up in there a little bit. But if we can kind of use that same access we had in there, cross over and then open that up and then help drain that area. So that'll be summertime.
Are we still doing one where it comes in the back of Coachman there too?
Yeah.
That finger there?
Yep.
Because we could probably get
We could
some
track in that
access
way
in there too.
Track in off of Coachman and then
Yeah.
work our way back up. Maybe that'll be an easier than trying to call.
Yeah, because otherwise you got to cross that one that we did on the north side up in there to get down to it.
Is that the blue line there on south of Coachman? Is that enclosed or is that an open swale? Just curious.
Probably a rear yard swale,
It's probably just
Okay.
a rear yard swale that was.
Okay.
'cause this drops off.
Okay. Any other questions on stream cleaning? Okay. We were supposed to have a guest today. I don't know, I don't see our guest, but I did send out, or we did include pictures. I don't know if I sent those out to the committee. So he did submit, he lives on Timberline, and we can zoom in maybe. Maybe not. So he lives on Timberline Trails, which is downstream of the Glenbrook Pond. So I know he's expressed some concern in recent years that he feels like he's getting more water in the stream behind him. So we've got the channel, Mike's pulling up the map. So come out of Glenbrook Pond, it goes pipe through there, open swale from there, and then runs on Timberline, turns the corner, and then runs behind Mr. LaMagna's house, and then it turns 90 degrees and then kind of cuts through Rodney Lane and then starts heading south from there. So he's had some concern that the water's been a bit higher, whether that's due to heavier rainfalls, some of the storm events we've had, and I think we've all seen that we get stronger storms that come faster, quicker through that. So he submitted some pictures showing his backyard in one of these heavy rainfall events. To me, it looks like, most of the water is kind of held and contained within the channel. It's pretty close to the top, but it's kind of, contained within that. But his concern or thought, was, is there an opportunity to regulate the outfall structure? And Glenbrook Pond is our only pond that has an adjustable weir on it, is to regulate that with most storm events. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, that we could go out there and adjust that up or down to try to regulate how much water is in that drainage way.
Mark, appears it's tough, I know from a photo, is there a little bermish between his backyard and the,
He's created one
Okay.
to keep the stream from coming into his yard.
okay, so
as you can
it works both ways though, right?
Yep, so there is a swale, and kind of where we're standing, so if we were taking the photo, there is a swale that comes down between him and his neighbor's yard that cuts into the channel. So there is a relief point there, but I know he's at a little bit of a berm on his side to kind of keep the creek from coming into his yard, but obviously that's also holding water from leaving his yard going back out.
So that looks pretty clear. Bob, have you done that in recent years? I think you have, right?
Yeah, we did that one probably 10 years ago now.
Okay, I mean, it looks pretty clear at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as you
And
look
we-
down,
And we did it all the way around to, was it Rodney on the other side there? But we haven't gone south of Rodney over in that section over there. We haven't done nothing over there yet.
And then most recently, we went east on Timberline. We cleaned that section, which hadn't been done in a long time, that feeds over from Beacon Hill. So Beacon Hills is across the street that discharges in. We did that in the last 5 years.
Probably 3 years ago.
3 years ago, yeah, it was fairly recent. We cleaned that piece of it. And then it goes into the channel behind Mr. LaMagna and then down south of Rodney. So I said, we can look at whether the stream isn't draining properly and look at the stream channel. But typically, we raise and lower the pond elevation twice a year. So, Bob, you can correct, it's usually like Father's Day and
Yeah, Father's Day and then
it's usually like,
Veterans Day.
so usually we lower it for the winter, so it's got lower water. If somebody was ice fishing or kids went out there or something, similar to the canal, you don't want to make it dangerous. And in the summer, you raise it up so you don't get the cattail growth and the vegetative growth. We have, knowing when a hurricane is coming or we have a major rain event, we have lowered it ahead of the storm to try to let some of the water out and take some of the
Takes
storage.
forever.
But that's some of the stuff that I shared with Mr. LaMagna, and he may come back at a future meeting, is I think we timed it last time, it was either 24 or 48 hours it took us to lower that pond down. So it's hard to tell with a
How long
thunderstorm.
does it take to actually drain the pond down when you do lower the,
It takes 48 hours to get down to the pipe, but to get it to the point where it's no longer or equalizing the flowing in there is probably close to 3 full days.
yeah, and how are you going to know rain events in
So that's
72
Right,
hours?
and then the
Kinda
problem
what-
is you got all that water is now going through their backyard.
Right.
So, I mean, you try to throttle it a little bit, so you're, and I shared with him, I said, we have, in knowing Hurricane Agnes or Katrina or something was coming through and we're looking at 4 inches of rain in a day or two, you've got 2 or 3 days leading up to it. We can open it up, we can kind of drain it down, and then they can close it, and then you can take some of the storm surge in the pond to then meter it out. But to lower it down, knowing that we're going to get a rain showers this afternoon or have a, even a line of storms or something, it's hard to time that and how much you open it and how much water you're letting out, and then you're closing it, and, one, the staffing hours, but two, just trying to time a rain event. And if you don't have 48 hours or 3 days, typically we don't know that we're getting rain.
And the rain events are larger.
Yes.
And the rain events are larger, but then if you go and lower it down, we drain the pond out, and then the storm misses us and doesn't come, and then now, other neighbors are concerned that the pond's empty, and now we've got stagnant, smelly pond area. So he may come at a future meeting, but this is, was his original concerns. I know he spoke to Eric about it. Mike and I went out on site, met with him, talked about it. He wanted to come in and talk to the committee, see what your thoughts are.
it sounds to me, between, what Bob has been doing and, making the call through the engineering department, that you're doing the right thing at this point. you can't predict the storms, number one, and I think you hit it, Mark, that, you're going to be sending all that water, then you don't get the rain, and you're going reverse direction. So I congratulate the town and, the highway and Bob, and the way that you're handling it, I think is appropriate.
And I think he just contacted us over the winter. We've got a lot of snow. It's hard to look at. I think we can look at the downstream channel. Maybe there are some blockages that's holding the water up a little bit. He had concerns about the bend and thought it wasn't as open on the bend. Mike zooming in on the corner. He thought the corner was a little restricted, from where he is. We could look at that. Obviously, if we've got to get a permit to widen it, make it any bigger, that's going to take us a year and a half to 2 years if we get the permit. But as Bob said, we hadn't done the lower end, Rodney South. Maybe there's some, material or blockages in there that's simple enough. There's a tree in there that we can open up, and that'll help, the flow run out.
I thought there was a big willow tree on the inside of that bend, too, on that 90-degree
is.
bend. I think there's a big willow tree
There's a
there.
big tree, right?
So, whether that's gotten bigger and there's a root wad in there that's holding things back, that's stuff.
The water was flowing around that bend. Anytime you get water to make a 90-degree bend, it's going to slow down.
Yeah. So,
What does he want to take the bend out, some of the bend out of it?
he just thought the channel wasn't as wide on the lower end as it is in his backyard, so he just thought that, if we could widen the channel out,
Well, the controlling factor could be the culvert
is
underneath.
the size
Rodney
of the
Road.
culvert under Rodney. You're not going to get any bigger than,
And there's not a lot of fall from that corner to Rodney. It's pretty flat through there.
yeah. So we said, we can look at that, once obviously the snow melts and we can get back in and walk some of these areas, we'll take a look at it. If there's some things we can do, or we need to apply for permits to do stuff that, is necessary, we can. But his other thought was, to adjust that control structure. And
Can we put that on our June walk?
Yeah, do a walk
yeah,
through there.
we can come on to Rodney and walk that corner and take a look at that, or I'm sure Mr. LaMagna would let us, access his property and see what it looks like in June and see, what the existing condition is as well. Because we had just, in this part of this group, was replacing a portion of the culvert under the road on Woodfield. So we just replaced that piece, but we didn't upsize it. We didn't change any sizing on it, and we actually didn't even change the outfall control structure. So that hasn't been adjusted, so that remains the same. The control structure's there. We added a new little walkway out to it, but the same gear and everything, and the same gate.
But we did a lot of work on that pond as far as, didn't we take care of it? Didn't we have A-tip in there to take care
Yeah,
of the?
muck.
And we still put the muck away in the pond to,
Could that be influencing the flow? Because it's going through the pond quicker?
it's still controlled by the outfall structure,
Yeah.
so I don't think
It was
changed too much. I think,
Or does he feel that could be the cause when it may not be the cause?
he wasn't sure the cause. He was happy that the Glenbrook Pond went in. He said before that went in, he was deemed in the floodplain. So his house was in the floodplain. Since Glenbrook Pond went in, he's been able to get out of the floodplain. So he no longer has flood insurance, whether on his house or on his property. So whether he's just seen these more frequent heavy rainstorms and the water comes up quicker from these rainstorms, and it's just brought a little concern back to him. We haven't changed anything on the sizing, the piping, how we operate it. I just think you get these quicker, more intense rainstorms. Not all the water's coming through the pond. You got some of the water's coming down Timberline, some of it's coming off of his backyard, his neighbor's backyards, the water on Timberline. So it's not just the water coming through the pond that's, filling into that stream. When you get extreme rains, as we all know, it just comes down hard and fast. It doesn't have enough time to soak in. It runs off quicker. So everybody, we've seen water in areas that you don't normally see it, or it just comes up faster than what we've seen.
I think based on Mr. LaMagna's email, that he's at least says that he doesn't want to have to get back into the floodplain. He says that may be at risk, but I think it would be a real stretch to think that they would include those that lands back in the floodplain after being removed
That's what I say.
all these years.
We've not changed anything, so I could see
Right.
if we made modifications to the pond, we changed the outfall structure, we
Yep.
increased the size of the culvert under Woodfield Drive, or did some changes to it.
Yeah.
Then I think, then FEMA, may relook at that, but since
But I think his
nothing's
point
changed.
is well taken, because, flood insurance, I've never had to pay for it, but I understand it's very costly. So we certainly don't want to put him into a position to have to, or his neighbors to start paying flood insurance again, but it sounds to me like that's probably not a possibility, or very, very minimal possibility, if that.
Yeah, I don't see the reason why FEMA would revisit that area.
Right.
None of the configurations changed, none of the infrastructure's changed. I could see if we added a larger culvert or we did something else that it would impact downstream, but I don't see why they would remap that or revisit that. But
With that, so let's say he's flooding, he's having an issue, and we trace that stream and find out that it's half a mile away that there's an issue and we need a permit. Is that, if having records for his property
it's-
help get the DC
him
permits?
having wet grass with the current DEC,
You're
it
not
would
gonna
not
get
meet it.
anything.
They would want to know what physical damage has he had to his structure, document, that over a period of time, he's either had erosion in his yard, even that would be a stretch. They're kind of backing up to basically saying, show us that your house is flooded, document how many times it's happened, show us an actual cost of what has been damaged, and then we'll take a look at what you've got.
They
So
don't
just-
really care about a wet
So
lawn.
just saying, if his grass gets wet after a rainstorm, they would basically say, okay, thanks, and,
Yeah.
that's just what
No,
they're
it's
looking for.
just-
It's a different approach than where we've been, so. So we'll reply to Mr. LaMagna. He can, watch, the group's discussion today, and if, he'd like to come back at our March meeting, we can, we'll invite him to come back. Is any changes, recommendations from this group in the meantime?
Just make sure we get it on in June so we can walk
Yeah,
it.
go visit it.
Yep, that's a good. Okay.
Maybe walk the whole stream down to the next
Yeah,
street to
that'll
make
be a
sure we
good-
can see if there's any issues, although as Bob said, it's pretty flat. Once the water hits there, it just sets.
Yeah, and we did widen that stream out from that bend to Rodney. That was choked down, and that we did widen it to the point where it is the same width as the pipe going underneath the road.
And that's our typical standard, having
Yeah.
the ditch any wider really.
So the
isn't
only
gonna
thing
get
you'd
any
really
flow
do
through it, and
Right.
would be to increase the pipe size going underneath Rodney, would be about the only thing we could do to alleviate some,
now
but
you're
that's,
Then you're gonna
chasing
have
drainage.
it on the
Now
other
the
side of
neighbors on the
Rodney.
south side are
Yeah.
going to experience more flow, and then you have to look at the one on Embry, and
Yeah.
that, you need to do a greater study, than just, that gets into a HEC-RAS study, that gets into a global drainage study before anytime you upsize a culvert, there's ripple effects that go on down the stream that you don't think about. So that would be a major undertaking for us to study, to look at it, and then replace it just on the if-come, so, okay. I don't see any other guests in the audience, so we'll move on from public participation. On the communication end of it, wanted to share, we did have our audit in December. So we were one of the lucky communities that our number came up this year. So every year, the DEC has been going around doing audits of all of the programs. So this is an audit, full audit of our MS4 program, which basically looks at how do we handle everything from once an application comes in, we review the SWIP, which is their stormwater pollution prevention plan for a new project. How do we handle inspections in the field? What do we do for education communication? This committee here is a great avenue for the public participation, as well as, talking about vetting it, put it on TV. A lot of communities don't have this, so this is, a feather in the cap of Penfield to have this group and this committee.
Mark, was it actually DEC personnel, or do they have sub-consultants come in? Because I know in Wayne County, when a lot of those audits, they hired an independent engineering company.
Yeah, no, this was DEC, so
Okay.
Luke Scannell and
Okay, yep.
one other, and I didn't I don't remember her name. So 2 members of DEC came out. We had a full-day audit. They came in the morning, went through our program. What do we do to participate with education? What's our involvement with the H2O Hero program? What do we do for communication? Where do we post our, our materials? Is this meeting open to the public? What do we, do with this committee? Do we talk about our stormwater programs? Do we talk about our stuff? Is there public opportunities for, education and outreach? That's minimum control measures 1 and 2. 3 is the IDDE, so illicit discharge detection and elimination. So if somebody sees there's soapy water coming out, how do they get to the town? Say, okay, we've got a website, we've got, opportunities people can call, email, there's our web submission, on the website, they can submit with that. How do we handle that once we get something and identify we've got a location? Recently we were identified, with the DPW crew that somebody saw toilet paper in a catch basin. So, okay, obviously that's a big red flag that stormwater is supposed to be stormwater and sanitary sewer is sanitary sewer. Shouldn't be cross-connected. So the sewer department went out, televised, found out, I think, 2 or 3 homes on one street. Somehow when they put them in, they swapped the pipes in the street, and storm went to the sanitary and sanitary went to the storm, and a 4-inch lateral coming out of the house, look, 2 different pipes. So, the town went in, worked with the homeowners to flip them back around and correct it. And that's, part of the program is these things happen, but how do you, identify them? How do you fix them? We've got to go out and do inspections at all our outfalls. We're looking for the stuff. Our sewer crews, as they're flushing and stuff, they're looking for it. And this one, was another builder developer that happened to notice it and said, hey, something doesn't look right here. You guys ought to come out and take a look at this. So, so there's education for that. Minimum control measure 4, there's 6 through it, is construction. So as I said before, when we get new applications in, who reviews the plans, how do we go through them, what process do we take, do we use a checklist, do we go through the DEC's process, with that, and then, how do we implement their notice of intent, whether we do a 5-acre waiver. So they kind of went right through our stuff and all our documentation and everything for them, as if it's not written down, it didn't happen. So we had binders that extended from here over to Ed Freeman with all our binders of all the stuff through the time that we've had, plus what we've got on the computer, our mapping. We've got great GIS shows mapping of where our storm and sanitary systems are, where our watershed districts are with that. We've got all the documentation. When other developers are required to submit their inspections, we document those. We've got those charted in there. So we had to show all that. Then minimum control measure 5 gets into post-construction. So how do we handle ponds, both our own and private? So we send letters out to all the private pond owners. Mike sends those out, letting people know that they've got to get their inspections done. They send them in. They hire a private engineering firm to do the inspections, say this what needs to be done, how is that resolved, how do we inspect our own ponds, our own outfalls, and then the final minimum control measure 6 is P2, or pollution prevention, and then we did a whole tour in the afternoon of the DPW facility. So we went over there, walked around the facility. They look at, was the salt barn covered? Where do the catch basins discharge? Do we wash our vehicles inside? If we wash them inside, which we do, where does that floor drain go to? It goes to an oil water separator before going to the sanitary sewer. How do we store our chemicals? Where do we store our fertilizers? Do we have any open containers outside? What happens to our battery recycling? So we did all that, and then from there, we actually went to 2 construction sites, and they wanted to watch how we do an inspection. Is the mailbox on site? Usually the little mailbox has SWIP on it. Is the mailbox there? We pull it out. The inspection sheet's there. How do we do our own inspection? So we went through all of that, 9 to 4 in a day. We have not received our final letter yet about it, but at the end of the day, they said we passed, which is great news, and they said that we were the best program that they've inspected this year, so I was happy to hear that as well. I'm sure they'll have some items, as they always will. If anytime you get audited, they're going to come back with a few things that we'll need to do to tweak and update our program, but was happy to hear, and at least we've got that behind us, because it's kind of been,
No, kudos to your
that's hanging out there.
team, Mark, but you know they are obligated to have some comments, so.
yep, well, I'm expecting the letter's going to come back, and,
Right, yeah.
I mean, nobody's perfect, and we know that, and we
No,
try to
but-
refine our thing every day.
But, you know, kudos to your team and Bob and his team for a great job that you've been doing. And I know a lot of communities do struggle with these audits, so sounds like you're up very well. So thank you all for your efforts.
Yeah, so,
Can we get a copy of that letter when it comes back?
oh, yeah, of course, share with this group, and wanted to kind of walk through what the audit was all about with this group. Because I say this was, you know, definitely a flag to wave for Penfield, was having this committee, having an outlet for, you know, residents to talk about drainage, talk about concerns. If, you know, if they see soapy water or oily sheen or something, a lot of communities don't have a direct outlet for that. Who do you call? You know, what group do you go to? Who do you talk to? And, you know, we shared this group. We do our tour in June. We've walked people's backyards. You know, it gives them an opportunity. They talk to the engineering department. They don't like our answer. They've kind of got this as an appeals, you know, group to come out there, and we've walked people's backyards and say, you know, either this is should be taken care of, or no, this is a private matter, you know. But, you know, this definitely was, I think Penfield's unique in having a watershed committee and having this opportunity, but a lot of their stuff is about education and getting public involvement and engagement. And we're on TV and broadcasting, so that's,
How long are we good for now?
I hope for a good number of
So
years.
they deem it's time to do it again.
Yeah. Glad it was a DEC audit than a EPA audit. An EPA audit's 3 days. A DEC audit is 1 day, so, you know, was happy for that. I mean, we could be audited by the EPA, but hopefully the two groups are talking, and I don't think we raised any red flags on our end that we're severely lacking in any area. As Mike said, we'll get comments on something, but I don't think we're severely lacking, so I don't think we threw up any flags yet, but we're waiting for the final letter. But yeah, once we get it, we'll share it with this group. And again, thanks to this group for your support, and, you know, as we talk through streams to clean and ponds to go through and everything else, you know, I think it definitely engages the public, the community, the residents, and gets them involved in the program. The next two, anything else, sorry, on the audit questions? So the next two items, the County Stormwater Coalition and the MS4 permit, I'll talk as one. So we actually had an executive Stormwater Coalition meeting today. There is a new MS4 permit coming out. They've sent out a draft form of it, and we are pulling together as a coalition our comments on it. I shared some of the stuff, it was probably 2+ years ago now, with this group, of some of the stuff they were looking to do. They've backed off on some of it. Some other stuff they're continuing to move ahead on. So while we've kind of met the mark of where we are today, they're looking to take it up another level. So if and when this permit moves forward, you know, we'll have more work to do to continue our efforts. There's more inspections required, inspections of catch basins. Before, they wanted to do all of our catch basins every year. We have 4,400-ish catch basins in town, so that would require 2 people full-time pretty much every day of the year going out inspecting and then cleaning. They backed off and said they wanted every permit period, so it's every 5 years. And then if it's a high-priority one, so it's in a, you know, a 303D or any other sensitive area, you've got to do them twice within the permit period. It's still going to be a lot of work. I mean, you're still talking 1,000 catch basins a year we got to inspect. So, you know, that's one of the items. There's other more outfall inspections we got to do. There's other stuff that comes along with it, but
Is that something we could do as a committee?
it's something, you know, the group.
You know, if you give
to
us a
help out.
checklist what to look for, and for instance, they just replaced the catch basins in front of my house, so they should be good for a few years.
Yep. I mean, that's all things we look, you know, with the community, and, you know, we've looked and worked with the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts in the past to do the the storm drain markings. You know, we could have, you know, community groups, and, you know, again, the public kind of helps us out and shares, you know, when a street light's out or something else. If it's in your neighborhood and you see it and it's outside your house, I may not see it if it's in your backyard immediately, but if you notice something, that helps us. But yeah, that's something, you know, as the committee, we can, I know we used to have areas of town and kind of streams that, you know, fell to different, you know, committee members. But if you've got stuff in your area or in your neighborhood, and that's where you walk and kind of look and say something doesn't, the catch basin looks plugged and it's full to the top, okay, it's time to be cleaned. And needs to be flushed out and, make sure it's continues to be functional. I know a lot of that happens when the guys are out sweeping. The guy's got his head out the window as he's looking where he's sweeping. He can kind of get a quick eye on, which catch basin's open or plugged. You kind of get a sense of that. The sewer crews are out flushing. They do catch basin cleans during the year, so we do have eyes on it. But we've just got to document that we've looked at all of them within 5 years. And again, if you don't document it, you don't write it down, it didn't happen. So it's all about documentation.
Yeah, Mark, it sounds like the 1,500 comments that the DEC got on the first draft paid off a little bit.
They definitely backed off, and
Good.
again, I'm not anti-environment. It's great. It's just we've got to make sure we've got enough staff budget to cover all of these new requirements. So we're looking at them again, and I don't have when the comment period's open to, but they said they extended the comment period. I think it was originally the mid part of this month. Hopefully, it's the end of this month. But as a Stormwater Coalition, we are looking at it. I'm sure other coalitions are looking at it, and then looking to provide comments back on how to comply. I think they're going to hold pretty strong on what's in the permit. I think some of our argument and our opportunity may be on the implementation time period. Some of them, they want you to implement it within 6 months. Some items are a year. Some items are, I think, having more time, and especially as part of the discussion this morning, if they adopt the permit and it goes into effect on April 1st or even June 1st, and it says you got to comply within 6 months, we're already into our budget cycle of this year. So I can't change and add more to my budget saying I need another staff person, I need, more flushing money. So I think that's some of the stuff that the coalition's going to put forward is, can we have more time at least to start and get it implemented? So 6 months from June puts me in December. I can't change the budget within this year. As we look toward the end of the year and we, June, July is when we start setting our budget for next year. If I know some of those things are needed and we can work with the town board saying, hey, we need additional staffing or we need additional monies for whatever, we can do that. So I think that's some of the stuff the coalition's going to go back with and say, hey, we need more time to come up to compliance on some of these items you're looking for us to do. It all takes time. It all takes, more effort. It all takes, more money to keep up with the regulations.
With basins, with drain basins, do you have any data on how many get plugged a year at this point? Or how many service at a year?
I know the DPW, they've got a regular budget, and you guys replace 50 to 80 every year of just ones that are old and broken and need replacement.
But not actually, you don't really record maintenance on them, like, had to go out and get this one because it was plugged?
No, we do probably 3 or 4 a week easily.
That's quite a few.
I mean, they're out there with the flush truck, and they got a Vactor, and they'll go out and Vactor them out, and not that we haven't been doing it, but to the frequency and the amount that they are wanting. And
Yeah, so I was just wondering is how much
We're hoping
more are
if-
they asking for?
And we're hoping, some of our comments, I think, maybe back to maybe in the commercial corridors that makes more sense. You've got more vehicle traffic, you may have more garbage, cigarette butts, that stuff.
gravel, general
If you've got a catch basin remote in somebody's backyard in a neighborhood, the likelihood that, that's going to have heavy metals in it, that's the stuff you're getting off the road, the stuff you want to keep out of the storm sewer. If it's got leaves in it, that's one thing. Okay, you don't want a blockage, but that's not creating an environmental issue. They're looking at, do you have cigarette butts? Do you have, where could you get heavy metals off of cars, fluids, an oil leak? Those are the things that I believe they're trying to capture. And so maybe some focus on, let's target the commercial corridors, let's target the heavier, densely populated areas. Then you've got more vehicle traffic, you've got more trash or other stuff that may end up in them. Then
Does a broken flush hose count? Like was my front of my house?
broken flush hose.
Yeah, in Sawmill Drive.
Yeah. We replaced them.
Yeah, replace the run between them also.
So we're going through that now, and we'll have comments back. I think DEC has kind of backed up what and why they're requiring what they've required, so I don't think a lot of the new regulations will change much. But Mike, to your point, I think the 1,500 comments they got from the towns, villages across the state at least gave them, I won't say a little pause, but kind of held back some of the time frame and everything else. Again, cleaning catch bases is not a bad thing. I'm not against it. It's just if we've got to clean 4,400 of them every year, we've got to dedicate a full-time crew to it, so now the Vector, we need a second Vector, and it's got to be fully designated to that, and we've got a 2 to 3 person crew on that every day of the year going out just cleaning and flushing out catch basins. So, it time and money, but, it's good for the environment, but you just got to, balance it with our current workload, and that's not the only thing they've got going on every day.
Mark, I haven't kept up with it as much as I had in the past, but have they been continuing to designate more MS4s outside of the MSAs, the, Metropolitan Standard Statistical Areas? I know, because I always look back and think, okay, like the city of Canandaigua was never an MS4, and it never made sense to me, and that was because of the distance between the city of Canandaigua and the city of Rochester. They were too far from being in the MA.
Yeah.
Have they talked at all about, or if they?
I haven't tracked it. I know there's only 2 communities within Monroe County that are not in. I believe Wheatland and Hamlin.
And I helped Wheatland get out of it. Thank you very much.
So I think those are the only 2 communities that are not in it. I mean, the Brockport School District is considered MS4, the college, not the high school, but the college is considered an MS4. But I mean, this year, the village of Webster got audited, the village of Brockport got audited, the village of East Rochester got audited. Those are smaller villages. They don't have a lot of development going on. They've kind of got the crews they've got. They don't really have a lot of people designated to stormwater. So, for those communities, adding more regulation, everything else, not that Penfield's huge and we've got extra people standing around, but, some of those communities, the fire marshal is the building inspector, is the planning, person, so it's kind of a all for one. Mike's, working on pulling up who's designated, but I believe.
And it is my understanding, as I'm looking at the map, that it's not the entire town. It's only certain areas of within the town that you need to follow those requirements. Is that correct?
We've always taken it that we're designated MS4, we apply those universally across the town. So
Because I think that's what the yellow and blue is on that
I think
map.
they've designated those are urbanized areas, but I think once you're in an urbanized area, then
It's the entire boundary of the town?
Yeah, and this is based on the 2010 census, so.
It'll change coming up here, right?
Right.
the 2020 census may expand that, but we enforce ours across the town, and I believe all the other communities that are in MS4s enforce it across their community, not just in
Right.
that urbanized area.
Okay.
So more to follow. Obviously, we'll have updates for this committee and, be looking for this group to provide input as we move forward. They had more requests for reporting. They were talking about every 6 months, we had to send a report in on how we are in compliance, meeting the compliance requirements. I think that's something, we'll push back on as well as, if we can make it annual, might be more feasible. We got to do annual report anyway, if we can kind of time some of those things with it. It just all kind of, if we're out there doing cleaning, maintaining, monitoring, it's hard to also be, sending reports and documenting as well. So it's just kind of where do you put your time and where do you put your focus? So we'll be back with more and see where we go with the permit from the DEC. Any other questions on that? So with that, we'll move down. We don't have any old business. Any new business tonight? No new business? So our next meeting is March 1st. So we'll hopefully be in the same location, same spot on March 1st. So with that, I'll look to close this meeting of the Watershed Committee. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Thanks, PCTV.